Joined now by Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, Democrat of Washington and chair of the House, New Democrat Coalition. Congresswoman, thank you very much for being with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Of course, one of the things that you heard President Biden say as he was doing that kind of impromptu Q&A with reporters in the East Room at the White House was that he believes Senator Manchin and I, he said, are going to get something done. And he told this joke that he told this to Mem, one of our colleagues here, that he said before, that people have said he can't be Irish because he doesn't hold a grudge. You know, I think, how far apart the president and Senator Manchin are on this. Do you see an area of common ground, and are you as optimistic as the president?
I think that we need to find that common ground. I think it's possible. The challenges that our country faces are too big right now, and the cost of inaction is too high to throw in the towel. We're going to work the New Dem Coalition to find that path forward because it is critically important. And frankly, folks want to see governance work. They expect us to govern, and part of governing is getting bills across the finish line. We don't help anybody till we get the bill passed.
So let me ask you about that, because you talk about how important this is for people, right? Some of the policies that are incorporated in the Build Back Better Act. One of them is the child tax credit, which I know is important to your coalition. We spoke with a woman from West Virginia, from Senator Manchin's state, on this show 24 hours ago, who laid out in, I think, very stark terms how personal and how important this is to her. I want to play that for you.
I've depended on this child tax credit to continue to feed my kids. This child tax credit was helping me to be able to put food on the table for my kids. And without that, the reality of it is I'll go without eating so my kids don't have to.
That money literally helped her put food on the table, right? Would you consider then, if in fact this were to get broken up, if you put the Build Back Better Act and took different pieces and passed them on its own, would you consider, for example, a standalone bill that would just deal with the child tax credit that could pass? Does that, I know you said you said failure is not an option this week. Would that look like failure, or is that success?
Well, I think her story is indicative of so many stories we've heard from families on the child tax credit. We've seen families be able to put food on the table, over 3 million families being able to put food on the table, to pay for housing, to pay their bills. And frankly, it's helped many parents be able to go back to work. So it's been critically important to families to help them get by, especially throughout the pandemic, but also as we see inflation. So this is an incredibly important tax cut to middle-class families, and so important why it continues. And I think the data has been very strong, and we have to talk to Senator Manchin about the data. That woman's story is the story and the example of what we're seeing. And we actually save money over the long run by making these investments because kids do better.
So given how important, as you just laid out, this is, would you consider passing it as a standalone bill instead of as part of the Build Back Better Act if it came to that?
Well, I think as we look at Build Back Better, I think we have an opportunity to make sure that we are looking at policies that are long-term policies, durable policy. I do think from the beginning, I've always said that we should look at doing few things well for longer, because that really provides the certainty that families and businesses are looking for. That's what we need to do in Build Back Better. I think child tax credit is a great example, but on climate, on making sure that we have long-term policy on healthcare with ACA premium subsidies, these are all things that are critically important for American families and that I think we can do together.
Let me ask you, on the pandemic, we heard President Biden in his speech there lay out this plan to get free at-home tests to millions of people across the country. I know that 10,000 people have been killed in your state alone. Washington hasn't really seen the intense spikes that we've seen, yet here in the Northeast so far. How hopeful are you that these tests are going to reach your state before those spikes do happen? And do you think the president's doing enough on that front?
Well, testing is very, very important. The first cases of COVID-19 actually were here in Washington state. So we know how important it is to have testing. Most important, how critical that folks are fully vaccinated. That's the number one thing that folks can do. And the president mentioned that. But testing availability is very important. So folks know if early on, if they have contracted COVID-19, that's why we need to get those out. And testing availability through public health, also very important. So I think that is part of the coordinated effort, and I'm glad to see the White House talk about how critically important we get resources out to communities.
Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I appreciate you spending some of your time with us today.